So we've all seen some of our favourite drummers playing, and here we're going to take a look at some of the motions that you may have seen them use around the kit. There's been a lot of talk recently about the use of the Moeller system, and we're going to look at some of those the movements that that system uses, and just see how they can positively affect our playing. So one of the key strokes within this within the Moeller system is the free stroke or full stroke, where we allow the sticks to rebound off the drums. If I was to ask you to play a single stroke roll at a medium tempo, you might well play it something like this. However, if I was to do that and think about the full stroke, it would look something more like this. Look for the difference. The difference being, with the second single stroke roll, the sticks were rebounding back to their starting point. In other words, with the first time I played it, each stroke looked something like this. Two movements. 1, 2, back to the top. With a full stroke, we're allowing the stick to rebound back to its starting point. And this applies all around the kit as well. It's easier said than done, though, unfortunately. So just to develop that, what you could try to do is this free stroke, where after throwing the stick down onto the drum, move the fingers out of the way and feel the stick rebounding back. There's energy within the stick after playing that stroke. And if you move those fingers out of the way, you should feel it want to rebound back. So what we're now going to do, and this is really quite important, is to put the fingers back around the stick and just follow the stick back up. So we're starting with this, then the fingers back around the stick, so what's important is my grip, or the way I'm holding the stick, hasn't changed. Even though I'm playing a full stroke, nothing's changed here. I'm not using any extreme kind of movements. You might see people practicing the full stroke with things like this. It's got nothing to do with the way you play the kit normally. So try and maintain your regular playing position. It's a bit like bouncing a basketball, actually. That stick wants to keep going. Same deal with traditional grip. I'm just putting the top two fingers back on the stick. Once it stops at the top, and obviously as the strokes speed up, then they're going to come in contact with the stick less and less. Until at that point, it's really just the thumb. I used to have some reservations about just leaving the thumb on its own at that point, thinking that the whole the grip was sort of falling apart. And but if you try and keep that forefinger in place, you're really limiting how far that stick can actually go back. So just let the thumb do its work there, and you'll see the stick goes quite a way further back. Both hands together. So this can have a major impact on your playing. If you're prone to putting a few dents in the drum heads, or just feeling tense when you're playing generally, this could well be make a big difference. For example, a lot of us, when we're playing the kit, can tend to feel as though we're playing through the drums. So playing into the kit, almost aiming for something below the heads themselves. And playing this way. Okay, so that's the full stroke. Now let's take a look at some of the other motions and movements. Another key movement that you'll see used within the Moeller system is this upward motion as the drummer is beginning to lift the stick to play an accented stroke. You may have seen drummers such as Vinnie Colaiuta or Steve Smith, and you see there's this flowing movement within their playing. And that's this upstroke. One of the easiest ways to, I think, to try and develop this is to play it on the hi-hats, combined with a downstroke, with that accent. So what you could do is think of, after you've played the downstroke, we're using the shoulder of the stick on the edge of the hats, and then we're going to play the up or lighter unaccented note with the tip of the stick very lightly on the tops of the hi-hats, like this. Gives us a down and an upstroke, so down and up. What I'm trying to feel as I'm playing that upstroke is that I'm almost getting that note for free. So as the arm is coming back up to play the accented note, the tip of the stick gets left behind. So in short, it almost feels like it's just one note I'm playing. I think that's easy to work on the hi-hats. We're all used to playing patterns similar to that on the hats if we place a simple eighth note groove. Notice there that as I say, this is it's a very natural movement to use. Notice also, as I'm playing the backbeat, both hands are falling in sync. So there's an upstroke in this hand as well. The only difference being is that I'm not playing that tap within it, but I'm still playing the up and then the down together. One thing to think about with this is, it's all well and good having learned this kind of movement, but be sure when you're playing these eighth note type of grooves that you're aware of why you're playing those accents. For example, Zorro calls that quarter note accent within eighth notes the anti-funk, and with good reason. Let me play you a simple funk groove. I'm going to accent quarter notes using that Moeller motion, and then I'm going to play the hi-hat with evenly accented eighth notes, and see if you can hear a difference. 1, 2. So the evenly accented eighth notes have a much more driving feel. So even though you may have developed your Moeller movement there on the hi-hat, don't feel obliged to use that motion every time you're playing eighth notes on the hi-hat. Do pick and choose when you're going to evenly accent them or you're going to use that motion. Another situation where you might use that movement that you've developed there is if you reverse the placement of the accented notes. At the minute, we're accenting the downbeat, the quarter note, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But if we accent the upbeat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now that's a useful hi-hat pattern. It also throws us a bit of a curve because we've then got a contra motion in so much as when we're playing the backbeat, we're playing an upward movement here and a downward movement here. So they're moving in opposite directions. It looks something like this. 1, 2, 3. And those upbeats can really lift a groove. For example, let me just play you a slightly more up-tempo feel, and I'll go from evenly accented eighth notes to the upbeat feel. One, two. So definitely one worth practicing, and one which I think you'll find using those movements helps to feel feels a little more comfortable as well if you incorporate that Moeller motion there. So there we've looked at the upstroke and the downstroke, playing them on the hi-hat. Let's just rewind a little and just think about a couple of key movements within that. So if for example, we take a look at the downstroke itself, one thing to think about is consistently stopping the stick about ½ inch to an inch off the drum. So after we've played a downstroke, what I'm trying to think about there is from that point, I'm either going to play an upstroke or a tap stroke, which we'll look at shortly. So we're just trying to develop some consistency there. So to do it, there's just a bit of tension in the hand, enough to stop the stick bouncing around. Same in both hands. Just the hand tightens up very briefly. Then the upstroke. You can feel this stroke almost starting from the back at the elbow here. So pivoting around the tip of the stick. And that tap within the upstroke is happening midway up as the stick is lifting up. And then you'll follow it to the top and bring the stick back down. So very slowly it looks like this. So that Moeller characteristic there is really apparent. We've got the back of the wrist is the highest point as the stick is coming up. And that same thing applies to this hand. Almost more of a roll in this hand. So a couple of things you can think about if you're sitting trying to develop this on a pad. A couple of images that can help make these motions a little easier. One is to almost think as though you're a puppet and there's a piece of string on the back of the hand. So there's a piece of string pulling that point, and that can help develop that sort of very relaxed tap within the upstroke and keep the back of the wrist as that highest point. Another one, which perhaps applies to traditional grips slightly more, is to think of someone asking you the time, and we'll do something like that. If we're wearing a watch, roll the hand over to look at the back of the wrist, and we get that roll within the upstroke. You watch any footage of Vinnie Colaiuta, and you'll see that movement prior to him playing a backbeat. The upstroke and then back down. As I say, if he's playing a backbeat, he may not play the tap within the upstroke, but that roll will still be there. So you might say, well, what's the point in spending the time developing these motions? What do they offer you? Well, firstly, we've already established one of those things. The first thing is the fact that it feels like you get the unaccented note for free. As I'm playing that, it really just feels like I'm playing the accent. I'm not playing two notes, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. That's the first thing. The other thing is, at slower tempos, having these motions and movements really help take up the space between the notes. And we're going to take a look at some very simple stickings that you can try now to start bringing these together. One of them, let's just stay with each individual hand for the minute. Firstly, what we're going to have to do, though, is look at the final, the fourth stroke, which is going to be the tap stroke. And we're going to play this, when I said we played a After our downstroke, everything was stopping about an inch or half an inch above the drum. This is where our tap stroke starts and ends. It's as simple as that. Again, it's deceptive, can be tricky to get that consistent. No tension in the hand. Basically, the tip of the stick is starting and ending in the same point, at the same point. The thing you want to try and avoid, some people have a tendency to do it, is to lift the stick to prepare before you play the stroke. So you could just try playing some slow singles, doubles. So now let's take our down, tap and up and combine them to give us a simple 3-note pattern, which is just going to go down, tap and then up. So basically got 3 notes with an accent on the front. That's the sound. So it looks like this. So down, tap, up. And again with this hand. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is let's add another tap and we'll give us 4 notes. So down, tap, tap, up. And the same with that hand. They're just simple exercises which, if practiced down at say 60 BPM, I think you'll really start to feel those motions sinking in and start to creep into your playing. The next thing we're going to do is then bring the 2 hands together. And now we again run into that possible problem of contra motions where you're thinking about the movement that one hand's doing whilst the other hand is playing something different. We're now going to play 4 notes again, but instead of in the same hand, we're going to split them between the 2 hands. So down, tap, up, tap, down, tap, up, tap. Same deal, leading with the opposite hand. And the next one we're going to try is hand-to-hand triplets, you might refer to it as. So single strokes, placing an accent every 3 notes. So this will work. The motions will be this: down, up, tap, down, up, tap, down, up, tap. And again, this is where starting to combine these motions can get a little tricky if you're really aware of the movements. So it looks something like this. And finally, at these slower tempos, we could take the paradiddle, and we're going to place an accent every 4 notes. So we're going to get right, left, right, left, left. And so the motions that we're going to use to play that are going to be down, up, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap. And this comes back to what we were just looking at earlier, where we use that motion between playing one note and the next note to take up some of the space between the notes. So it looks something like this. And it might seem a little alien to be practicing these things down at that kind of tempo, but they really will creep into your playing, and eventually you'll start to notice you've got this very fluid movement around the kit that, as I said earlier, you'll probably see in players such as Vinnie Colaiuta and Steve Smith. And I'm sure you'll really feel the benefits of analyzing the mechanics of your playing to this degree. It will take some time, and be sure to practice these exercises slowly. As I say, down at 60 BPM with these simple down-up movements, for example. So playing just quarter notes, down, up, really gives your brain time to assimilate those movements. And I'm sure you'll feel a difference within a few weeks, and that they'll start to creep into your playing.